Interstate 4, the Disney Highway, sunshine, palm trees, and everything magical. Cutting diagonally across Florida, it is the lifeline of the central part of the state, connecting the Tampa Bay area with Orlando and Daytona Beach. With the explosive population growth of Florida, Interstate 4 has basically been under construction since it was built. Well, despite all the beautiful and magical sights along it, Interstate 4 has been consistently ranked as one of the, if not the, most dangerous highway in America. And what is it like to drive on this dangerous interstate? What exactly makes it so dangerous? On this video, we're going to find out. So hit that like button, subscribe if you enjoy this type of content, and let's talk about Interstate 4. First, a brief history of the notorious Interstate 4. Interstate 4 was actually one of Florida's first interstates to be constructed. It largely followed the US 92 corridor in the state. The first section opened way back in 1959 between Plant City and Lakeland. Tampa to Orlando was done by 1962. Plans originally designated a freeway all the way to downtown St. Petersburg as I-4. And today, the western terminus is where you would find exit 20 on I-275. By the late 1960s, the interstate was complete from Daytona Beach to St. Petersburg. And on the map here from 1970, we can see that I-4 was the only completed interstate in Florida at this time. But in 1971, the western terminus was moved to the present-day terminus in Tampa, while I-75 went over the Howard Franklin Bridge. Eventually, I-75 was replaced with I-275 in the area and moved to its present routing, bypassing St. Petersburg and downtown Tampa. Florida had a lot of foresight when building I-4 in the state. Most of its interchanges were constructed to accommodate more lanes later down the line, so as not to require completely rebuilding them to widen the road. In some places, the right-of-way is wide enough to handle up to a 10-lane Interstate 4. Florida also had foresight regarding high-speed rail on the section between Tampa and Orlando. The median was built wide enough for a high-speed rail line to be built inside of it, a council project that was known as the Florida High-Speed Rail Corridor. The federal government awarded Florida the money to build almost the entire project, but it was rejected in 2014 by then Governor Rick Scott and canceled. The company Brightline has since resurrected this corridor and is in the process of building rail along much of that old proposed line. With the explosive growth of Florida, I-4 was widened to at least 6 lanes for its full length by 2017. And in 2022, a massive project known as I-4 Ultimate was completed in the Orlando area. This added 2 express lanes in the median of I-4 through much of the area, which currently terminates near Sand Lake Road. But there are plans to eventually continue it much further south towards Tampa, at least out to Champions Gate. Similar express lanes are also being considered by the Florida DOT for the Tampa area. Now, what makes I-4 so dangerous? The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says that I-4 has a staggering fatality rate of 1.25 to 1.4 per mile, while a 2024 Assurance IQ report confirmed 34 fatal crashes per 100 miles on I-4. Studies indicate that Florida has one of the lowest percentages of insured drivers in the nation, with only 76.2% insured. This is significant in that uninsured drivers tend to have less regard for driving regulations. The first danger factor with I-4 is the traffic volume. Florida has been exploding in population since Interstate 4 was built, and as such, it has been perpetually plagued with heavy traffic and congestion. I-4 is one of the few interstate highways without a viable alternative U.S. route, as the routes that it replaced or traveled along consist of a very indirect collection of highways, making I-4 the only logical and viable path between Tampa, Orlando, and Daytona Beach. It also is unique in that it has no auxiliary routes or toll-free bypasses, which encourages local, long-distance, freight, and tourist traffic alike to use it. Another factor is construction. Related to the growth of the region, I-4 has basically been under construction since it was built. With the massive population growth of Central Florida, it has been overwhelmed for its entire existence. Driver behavior during construction has led to an increase in traffic accidents compared to other interstates. Other factors such as Florida's propensity for severe weather makes driving conditions even more dangerous. And then finally, we have driver behavior. There's just something about I-4 that seems to encourage significant amounts of reckless driving. Perhaps it's the long, straight portions of the roadway, or the generally flat terrain. Even projects like I-4 Ultimate, which has made the roadway much safer in many respects, has also had the unintended downside of encouraging more aggressive driving. So when you're out on I-4, stay alert, stay vigilant. Your life could depend on it. All right, so what is it like to drive on one of America's most dangerous interstate highways? Let's find out. We're going to start in Tampa and head to Daytona Beach. west to east by signage, but really southwest to northeast in reality. I-4 begins at this interchange with I-275 right next to downtown Tampa. This area is usually pretty congested, and consider yourself lucky if you traverse it without some major slowdown. The two right lanes are marked for I-4, while the two on the left are for Interstate 275. Eventually, we get a third lane added for the movement to exit onto I-4, and with the control city of Orlando, we are off. We are still in downtown Tampa, so this section of the interstate is usually quite busy. The first major interchange is a short connector that gives you access to the Selman Expressway, a toll bypass that can be used to avoid the congestion of I-275 and I-4 across the area. Note that it is a left exit from I-4. The fourth lane drops at the exit for US 41, and we are down to 3. It goes without saying that the condition of the roadway itself is superb. One thing I have to credit Florida for is that their freeways are among the best in the US when it comes to maintenance. Leaving Tampa, we encounter Interstate 75. At Interstate 75, Florida chose to use a unique turbine interchange design, and there are only a few of these in the country as of now. They're not as impressive to look at as the large stack interchanges, but in terms of functionality, they work pretty well with their large queuing area. Not to mention the much lower cost due to less bridges being needed. Interstate 75 is signed with Naples to the south and Ocala to the north. Unlike most interstates that we've discussed, Interstate 4 doesn't really have any sort of cool down area between Tampa and Orlando, meaning the development never really stops. When you're not in suburbia, then you're running next to older established cities such as Plant City and Lakeland, which can either be a part of the Orlando or the Tampa Bay areas, depending on who you ask. Be careful on this stretch as it tends to be the most dangerous in my experience. It just seems to be something with the visibility and the way that people drive that just makes this stretch highly uncomfortable. So stay vigilant. The first city of significance outside of Tampa is Plant City. And while I'm sure they have plenty of plants out there, it is actually not named for our carbon dioxide breathing friends, but instead for Henry B. Plant and his South Florida Railroad. Plant City is known as the strawberry capital of the world, and Exit 21 will give you access to check out its downtown area. Right after Plant City is Lakeland. Lakeland is known for, of course, having a large amount of lakes, but it is also home of the Publix grocery store, which has a complete stranglehold on the grocery market in Florida. Lakeland has a toll beltway known as the Polk Parkway, which up until recently was a rare 2-lane freeway but has since been upgraded to the standard 4 lanes. Lakeland has some interesting sites to check out, such as Lake Mirror, and after you've gotten your pub sub and past the second interchange with the Polk Parkway, we get a rare break in the development. This wildlife management area is the only thing left still separating Tampa and Orlando's development from one another. I'm sure the developers are just dying for it to be opened up for more sprawl. Travel is so heavy out here that even Google's car couldn't get a clear view of it when mapping for Street View. The exit for US 27 is marked for Haines City and Davenport and represents the western boundary of the Orlando area's reach, for now. For the next several interchanges, you're about to experience the worst part of the highway to drive on. Up next is Champions Gate, which is infamous for its horrific congestion and daily backups. Looking at the surrounding style of development, which is highly prevalent in Florida, one can see why a simple 6-lane freeway just won't cut it out here. Despite the big, extravagant sign, Champions Gate is not actually a town or a city. It's just a place, which if you've seen my other videos about Florida, then you know they have a lot of those. It just exists. Continuing towards Orlando, we encounter Florida 429, which is the western side of Orlando's sort of beltway. Also be forewarned that all freeways in the Orlando area are tolled aside from Interstate 4 itself. So if you want to avoid driving through downtown Orlando, then you're going to have to pay. Magical things are ahead, as our next interchange is for World Drive and Celebration. Also signed is Florida 417, which is the eastern side of the Orlando Beltway. So your choices here, if you exit, are for a toll around Orlando on 417, a celebration in the master plan community of Celebration, or a trip to the Magic Kingdom on World Drive. Which one would you choose? And then we have to mention US 192. US 192 connects to Kissimmee to the east and all the good old Disney and related resorts to the west. This one is pretty well known by tourists in the area. Also, just as a reminder, while we are passing by all those wonderful resorts and sites, we're also sitting in some of the worst traffic in Florida. This area is pretty much always congested. Maybe if you drive it on a Sunday morning, you can escape it. But weekdays, Saturday afternoon, forget about it. Up next is the Central Florida Parkway, which is a major arterial that can take you to SeaWorld or to the southern end of International Drive. And then there is Florida 528, the B Line or Beach Line Expressway. It's Orlando, so of course this one is tolled as well, and can take you to the Space Coast, which is the beach area for those in Central Florida. And up next is what is perhaps the biggest cluster on this entire highway, Sand Lake Road. This interchange is horrific in design and function. Sand Lake Road passes through the suburban area of Dr. Phillips to the west and immediately has a major intersection with International Drive to the east. If you've ever been in this area, then you know that this interchange stays backed up. Looking at it overhead, you can see why. Major interchanges and development are immediately next to it with Turkey Lake Road and International Drive. Meaning drivers from those roads are often doing a bunch of queuing, crazy lane switching, and such, trying to get into the proper lane or for whatever area they're trying to access. On the weekends, it is absolute madness. You got all the tourists trying to get to and from International Drive mixing with the people trying to get to the shopping centers. These intersections really shouldn't have been built so close to the interchange. The first time I went to Orlando, I stayed in this area for a month at the Comfort Inn right there, and I think I had nightmares about how long it was going to take me to get onto I-4 every morning. Now, unfortunately, as a part of the I-4 Ultimate project, this is in the process of being redesigned into a divergent diamond interchange. So we'll see in the future if this helps with traffic flow around here. And despite all this development, we are not yet in Orlando proper. The city limits start shortly after this interchange. And surprisingly, Orlando has not yet annexed this Dr. Phillips area or the rest of International Drive. Also, after this interchange, the express lanes from the I-4 Ultimate project appear. And as someone who got to experience the before and after of driving I-4 in Orlando, I have to say these express lanes have been a godsend. Before them, on I-4, you were going to encounter congestion at any given time. Just out of nowhere for no reason. It's like the traffic just appears. Wrecks along I-4 in Orlando were a daily occurrence. I'm pretty sure I saw at least one every day. There's just something about I-4 out here that makes people want to drive like crazed bats. But now with these express lanes, you can just cruise through the city, escape the craziness in the general purpose lanes, and just relax. But of course, this is going to cost you. So here you have a choice to make. Pay with your time and your sanity, or pay with your dollars. Up next is the interchange with Florida's Turnpike. Signed for Ocala to the north and Miami to the south. And a fun fact about the Turnpike is that it technically doesn't enter the city limits of either of these cities, but as far as destinations go, they do make sense as control cities. Though signed east-west, I-4 travels in a more north-south path through Orlando. And as we approach downtown, we get a spectacular view of the Orlando skyline and this interchange with Florida 408 next to it. Got to give credit where it's due. Florida has some of the most beautiful roadway infrastructure in the country. As we continue eastbound, more of Orlando's skyline is visible to the right, and the Kia Center can be seen to the left where the Orlando Magic play. At exit 87, we leave Orlando proper and enter the suburbs. Winter Park and Maitland are up next, and Winter Park features a nice little downtown of its own that's worth a visit if you have time. At this interchange with Florida 414 is Maitland Boulevard, which is a hybrid surface boulevard / expressway with interchanges. You can use it to get to Apopka and, of course, Maitland. After passing through several more miles of suburbia, we reach the northern side of Orlando's Beltway. At this one, Florida 429 and 417 are actually connected. They are signed for the exurb of Mount Dora and the city of Sanford, which is a principal city in the Orlando metro area. Lake Monroe forces a break in development for a bit until you come to the city of Deltona. Despite its high population of almost 100,000, Deltona is yet another of those type of places in Florida. It is incorporated as a city, but largely consists of a bunch of sprawling subdivisions that got together and said, hey, let's create a town. The actual city in this area is Deland, which features a quaint little downtown. As far as traffic goes, I-4 calms down significantly in this area compared to Orlando, but it is still dangerous with speeding drivers and visibility issues, so stay alert. After the interchange with Florida 44 for Deland and New Smyrna Beach, we get another break in the action as we pass through the Longleaf Pine Preserve. Out here, it's long, straight, flat, and has a lot of trees. Don't fall asleep. It pretty much stays like this the rest of the way, even as we approach I-95. But before getting onto I-95 is the connector for US 92 for Daytona Beach. This is the one that will take you into the heart of Daytona along the iconic International Speedway Boulevard. But remaining on I-4, you will eventually see signage for I-95 to Jacksonville or Miami, along with Florida 400 to South Daytona. I-4 is a rare case where you get 3 choices rather than 2 for how it ends. Choose your fate, but either way, it ends here. The I-4 end sign can be found on the exit for Florida 400, while the other two will simply merge into I-95. Welcome to Daytona Beach. We have arrived. And all right, guys, that is it. Interstate 4 is in the books. What has been your experience driving on Interstate 4? If you live down in that Orlando area, I'd really love to know what you think about the I-4 Ultimate project, and if you feel like it has helped or hurt traffic and safety in the area. Did it surprise you that Interstate 4 is the most dangerous in the country? Did you think it was another highway? Let me know what you think down in the comments. And also, Interstate 40 won the vote for next week's video, so I will also see you next week, and we go travel across the country on I-40.